Tonight we're in the great cathedral city of Lincoln, and welcome to Question Time. Good evening, whether you're watching at home, listening at home, here in the audience. Welcome to you and to our panel, of course. Tonight, the Conservative Defence Minister, Anna Soubry, Labour's Shadow Foreign Secretary, Douglas Alexander, the newly elected President of the Liberal Democrats, Sal Brinton, the Political Director of the Huffington Post UK, Mehdi Hasan, and the historian, David Starkey. On to a question that is at the heart of this forthcoming election. It comes from Eddie Strengle, please.
In order to help reduce the deficit, should we tax more or streamline certain services?
Tax more or streamline, by which you mean
cut?
By which you mean cut?
Not necessarily. Streamlining means cutting out waste, but not necessarily cutting services.
Tax more or streamline services. Douglas Alexander.
I think we need to do three things. There are going to have to be reductions in public expenditure, but we do need fairer taxation with those with the broadest shoulders paying more. And at the same time, at a more fundamental level, we also need to run a different kind of economy. We all welcome the fact that we're seeing falling petrol prices at the pumps, but the truth is, anybody with a wage packet at home knows that we haven't seen wages rise over many years. And the truth is, unless we see wages rise in our economy, then we're not going to be able to deal with the deficit properly, because we won't be generating the tax income and we won't therefore be able to support the services that we need. So we've seen a failed approach from this government, which is to cut ever deeper. They're about £200 billion adrift from the target that they set themselves to reduce the deficit. I think it's time to leave behind that failed plan and embrace a better plan. And that better plan does involve, for example, those with incomes above £150,000 paying more. It does, for example, involve recognising that there will nonetheless continue to need to be costs reduced within the public sector. But we've also got to run a different kind of economy. If we don't see rising wages, we're just going to see the deficit stretch into the future, as we've seen over the last 4 years.
Anna Soubry.
I think the thing is, Douglas, you had your chance for 13 years to run our economy, and look at the mess you made of it. And people rightly won't trust you again, and I have to say, I don't think they'll believe you as well when you make all these amazing claims about the things that you will do, because the simple truth of it is, we do have to live as a nation within our means. We're actually taxing people at a higher rate, 45%, than ever we had under 13 years of Labour. So we are also, at the same time, actually making tax cuts
to millionaires?
I didn't interrupt you.
Oh, you have several times. Why did you give tax cuts to millionaires?
No, but not on this one. Now, please let me just finish. We are having higher rates of taxation of 45% than we did in 13 years. We've taken millions of people out at the lower end of paying taxes. And most importantly, we're restoring our economy. We're putting sanity in. We are making sure we're living within our means. We are cutting the deficit. And we have record levels of employment. We have hundreds of thousands of people now who are in work, taking home a wage, having a responsibility, doing the right thing, and all the other things that being in work does for people. And we have growth in a way that we should be proud of. And if we hand it all back to you guys, we'll be back near the verge of the bankruptcy courts. We've got a plan, and we now need to carry on delivering it.
The woman in the second row.
You say that you've increased employment, but all these, it's minimum wage, it's not a living wage. It's a living wage, not an actual wage. And you say that there are 0 hour contracts. How do you expect people to get off benefits and be able to work and provide for their families if they are not getting regular hours from their employment?
But the reality of it is that we have hundreds of thousands of people now in work. And I think just simply saying, oh, it's low paid or it's zero contract, and actually... Because we are actually looking at 0 hour contracts. Some people suit them, not everybody suits them. That's why we're looking at... I'm just going to say so, that's why we are... I agree with you, for some people... I agree with you, for people on benefit in particular.
But what your government is doing
and that is
exactly
exactly what we are looking at.
You're saying that we put more people in employment, but you've put more people into 0 hour contracts.
But it is better, surely, sir, it's better to be in work and bring home a wage than sit at home and do nothing.
You can't live. And also, wait, another really important thing is you've got rid of the crisis loans.
You've had your say. You've had your say.
Why did you get rid of the crisis loans?
Sorry, take the microphone away from him because he's had his say. You have had your say. Well, you have had your say. A lot of other people want to say. David Starkey wants to stay. Briefly, David
You've been
Starkey.
very silent here.
I don't know, it's amazing.
I think well, first of all, can we be quite clear? There have been no overall cuts in government expenditure at all, which is why the deficit is ballooning.
No, not the deficit. Borrowing might have gone up, but not the deficit.
Borrowing increasing enormously.
Not the deficit,
it's virtually
darling. We nearly
doubled.
halved it.
It's virtually doubled.
But half the deficit.
Halving the deficit. The borrowing has doubled. What we're doing at the moment is something very frightening. Two things. We've got, effectively, a very, very large National Health Service with a very small and shrinking state attached to it. And we're really going to have to choose. Everything is being sacrificed to 2 or 3 things, to education, to the health service and to foreign aid. All other areas of government, you talked about the police, they're being shrunk. Area after area. Now, do we want this? Is this how we want to run ourselves? Do we simply want to be a National Health Service with a little shrunken willy of a state attached to it? I think no, and I don't think we should. I also think there's something else. I agree with you about jobs. There are 2 problems. The first was Gordon Brown introducing in-work benefits. Yes, in other words, this was disastrous. Lincolnshire knows all about this. There was the Speenham land system in the late 18th century by which the state or local ratepayers subsidised the wages of local workers, local farm workers, which drove the wages down and down and down. So that was a disastrous idea. But the second is we've had globalisation. We have deliberately thrown our economy open in every way to countries where levels of wages are tiny, where there is no social security, where people will work for nothing. And we admit their goods essentially without tariffs. I'm sorry, you cannot actually have our levels of wages and social security and globalisation and absolute freedom of trade. In all our ways, our politicians around this table pursue utterly contradictory goals. Nobody thinks, nobody reasons, nobody either looks at the past or takes serious
All right, briefly, what is your prescription then? Taxes up, pay for the NHS? What would you do? Just very briefly.
My prescription is that we have to start choosing. In other words, we stop pretending we can have everything. These people at the next election will all pretend to you you can have everything.
And what would you cut out?
I believe
attacking them. What would you do?
What I would do is I would face up to the truth. I think we're at the point where we probably need to flirt with protection. I'm surprised at myself for saying this. The evidence of the last banking crisis, that it was very largely to do with the free movement of capital. Why are there 0 interest rates? Because places like... Because China, because much of the Middle East, there are gigantic accumulations of capital.
OK.
So we've got to start choosing. Right. And we have politicians who will not give you honest choice.
Starkey tariffs. OK. You, sir, over there. Then I come to you.
Just to address the original question about whether we should be raising taxes, surely we should be addressing the issue of corporations such as Amazon and Vodafone completely avoiding tax altogether. And then you wouldn't need to raise the tax. If everyone paid equal tax, you wouldn't need to raise the tax.
You think that would yield enough, those companies, do you?
Not just those 2 specific companies, but I'm sure there are more than them.
Brinton?
Can I come back?
Starbucks.
Come back where you like.
Can I come back to Eddie's original question, which is tax rises or streamlined services? You can't have an either-or. If there are tax rises, it has to be for those who can afford it, because actually they have got off somewhat lighter.
Not true.
No, they have.
It's not true.
They have.
David,
the percentage of tax paid by the rich has increased every year.
That is true.
It cannot be at the cost of the public services that are essential. And that's why you can have a stronger economy, which the Conservatives keep talking about, but you can't do that if you have to face major cuts, for example, in the NHS, or, as was leaked in a Conservative document last week, they're not going to protect the education. You can't have good, strong
public services unless you've got a good, strong economy.
All right,
That's what pays for our services.
You can consider what taxes you're going to raise to cover that. So we have said the NHS needs £8 billion extra pounds. There's no doubt about that at all, and we've said that we will find it because that is an absolute priority.
Where will it come from? That's a completely uncosted promise.
Even
not a single fact. Where's it coming from?
It will come from... you talk about the mansion tax.
One of the things that we want to do...
We want to do a slight variant on the mansion tax.
How much does it raise?
3 years.
How much does it raise?
It raises considerably more than yours because
we raise £8 billion a year.
The mansion tax is bigger than yours.
The woman there on the right, and I'll come to you, Mehdi, because we're coming towards the end of the programme. The woman in the spectacles there on the right.
Have you spoken to Danny Alexander about this?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about everybody else, but... you know, talking constantly about the deficit and the sort of economics of things, you know, look at what the actual cuts are doing to people. Most public services are down to the bare bones. You know, people, they're hitting the most vulnerable, the hardest, you know, and we've got to protect these people in our society. And managing the sort of economics of the country is not at all like managing your own home budget, as people keep trying to say. It is not. And there is money.
You get the point. Mehdi Hasan.
No, Anna, live within our means. George Osborne, your Chancellor, has missed every debt, deficit, borrowing and growth target he set for himself in 2010. George Osborne has borrowed £200 billion more than he said he would borrow in 2010 because he didn't get the growth he needed.
So what would you do?
And by the way, that's not because of cuts. That's not because... I'll come to that. That's not because of cuts, as David suggested. It's not because of cuts. It's because of lack of tax revenues from low-paid work, from zero-hours contracts. And you know what's the real scandal? As the lady said there, the real scandal is the costs of all this. Why in the fifth richest economy in the world did 1 million people go to use food banks last year? I think that's a true scandal. We want to balance the budget. We want to balance the budget on the backs of the poor. What are the financial sector pay for?
You
gave me the least time, David, so I'm going to make a point. You did. You came to me and said I had 30 seconds. I'm using it. What do you better say?
We've restored our
banks.
We've restored our
Bring in a Robin Hood tax.
You know that we have. We've increased employment. We've got growth on the list.
How about bankers' bonus tax?
We've got one of the most successful companies. We've got one of the most successful economies in Europe, if not the world, and we should be proud of that.
And 1 million people using food banks, Anna.
All right, before anarchy takes over. Thank you very much, but our hour's up, I'm afraid.
You're very
Eastleigh. No, don't carry on now.
No, I was telling you he was very naughty. I was being nice to him. No, I was being nice to him.
We're in Eastleigh next week. We've got Diane Abbott for Labour, Esther McVeigh for the Tories, Paul Nuttall, the Deputy Leader of UKIP, Tim Farron for the Liberal Democrats. I don't know who that was for. And the editor of The Independent, Amal Rajan. The following week we're going to be at Wrexham in Wales. So if you can come to Eastleigh in Hampshire, Wrexham, Wales, apply in the usual way. Go to our website. You can call 0330 123 9988. If you're listening to this on 5 Live, as you know, the debate goes on Question Time, Extra Time. But here, well, I hesitate to say the debate comes to an end, because I doubt it does. But anyway, for the moment, we have to stop. My thanks to our panel and to all of you who came to take part here in Lincoln. Until next Thursday. From Question Time, good night.
And free speech in the frame with Andrew Neil, joined by Susie Perry for This Week on BBC One Next.